in general, I'm very happy right now.
Okay, this sounds like me. What was it, last week or the week before? Oh God! All right, lay it on me.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know if I've mentioned on the show much, if at all, but for about 15 years, maybe, I have had a weird stomach allergy to bananas and avocados.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned that for sure.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. If I eat them, I just get this like massive stomach ache, like as if I ate a saw blade or one of those like spiky crusty O's from The Simpsons. Like it's like that kind of thing. Like just huge, like just pain, and nothing, not too much detail, but like nothing can come out either direction to fix this problem. It's just pain. All right. So anyway, in my life, I've known a couple of celiacs. One of them told the others, "You should try taking colostrum," because I was once a celiac and it fixed me. And so far, all three of them have been fixed by taking colostrum. So, hey, anyone out there who's celiac, you might want to look into that.
With your doctor. Don't just blindly listen to us idiots. Let's talk to your doctor.
Is this a medical thing or is this a non-medical thing?
I don't know the details. So colostrum is like the first milk from a cow, like right when the calf is first born. I don't know the details. I'm probably butchering it, but the idea. So you can get these pills on Amazon. It's like this weird New Zealand company that makes them.
You can get these pills on Amazon as leading me in the direction of non-medical.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so the theory is that it like stimulates I think it stimulates the cilia in your small intestine to like regrow or fix itself somehow. I don't know. Anyway. I apologize to anybody medical out there who I'm butchering this, but
yeah, don't forget the magnetic bracelet.
I'm just saying. I've known multiple celiacs who have tried this, and it has actually like solved their issues. Like people who were celiacs for years, and like you take it, and then it just like fixes it, and then you can stop taking it, and you stay fixed. Anyway, so I thought maybe this might help this issue because this seems like some kind of weird small intestine issue. So I've been taking colostrum pills for like about a month and a half or so, and I decided let me start testing this allergy again.
Wait, did you do this today on a day that you're recording?
I've been doing it gradually.
Okay, I'll allow it.
So bananas, they're not that hard to get or not that expensive. What could one cost? $10. So I took a couple of bananas and sliced them up into little discs, and I froze them. And so that I had like intervals, like fixed intervals that I had constant access to.
I'm not sure what. I guess the freezing is preservation. Like, what function is the freezing serving here?
Yeah, because when you only go shopping like every 2 weeks, it's kind of hard to keep fresh bananas in stock.
All right.
So I would just every day I would try one slice and just see like what happens. And the first time I tried it, I kind of had like a nervous stomach afterwards, but I'm like, I think that might just be psychological because I'm
Yeah.
So I just kept doing it. Like every day I would just take one. And it got to the point where I would forget. Like I would, just throw it in my mouth and then I'd move on and I wouldn't think about it and I'd feel fine. And I would increase it to, look, let's try 2 today. And let's try 3 today. And slowly increased it. And now I'm up to being able to eat a full banana by itself fresh and I don't feel anything. It's fantastic. So
that's exciting.
For the first time in 15 years, I can eat bananas. Now I haven't tested it on avocados yet. I'm gonna start that test next. Again, same thing, controlling. I didn't want to try them both at once. Controlling for the factors, like, let me try one first, get that fixed, which seems to be the case. And now I can get a smoothie that doesn't suck now.
That's true.
I was going to say, what is the banana item that you're most excited to eat?
Smoothies, yeah.
Oh, smoothies are excellent.
Not peanut butter and banana sandwich?
Or banana bread, man. Oh,
yeah, banana bread too. Like that should be fine. I haven't had that in 10 years either, or 15 years. But anyway,
that's no way to live.
That's reason number 1 that I'm happy. That I had a banana earlier today, and I had one yesterday, and I had one the day before that, and it's been fine. And now I have 15 years of bananas to make up for.
Be careful. Too many bananas give you hard poops.
I know. I've heard. But I eat a lot of vegetables. So believe me, my fiber situation is fine. Thanks, John. So anyway, the second reason I'm very happy is that I have been incredibly busy with doing some stuff in real life. It's good stuff, it's fine. But that has resulted in me not paying any attention whatsoever to the news or any flare-ups between people on Twitter or anything like that. I haven't even checked Instagram like almost at all in about a week. I've just been so busy. Everyone always thinks like, oh my God, the world is so bad now. Like now this is extra bad. Now I really got to pay attention. And the reality is I salute everyone out there who pays attention for me. I'm in a much better mental state by keeping a lot of distance from a lot of that stuff. And so anyway, reason number 3 I'm happy is that is the same reason why every muscle in my body hurts right now. It's more of a mixed happiness in the sense that I got here. I got my here. I'm knocking the mic here. My Theracane right here, massaging my neck and shoulders here and there tonight because everything is sore. Because my task this week that has been keeping me so busy is we've had this house for a while, and we never really did major cleanouts. Like, we would clean here and there, but like we just have, 12 years worth of stuff accumulation. And we decided this week there was no school. Adam was visiting his grandparents upstate for a week, and we thought we are going to spend this week, we're going to rent a dumpster and actually like really clean out as much as we can, like massive, early spring cleaning.
This is what sex is for married people, by the way. Let's rent a dumpster. Yes, the kid's away. Finally.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
I've never rented a dumpster before. It turns out you just call, literally the company that is recommended here is called AAAAA, carting or whatever. It's one of those Yellow Pages names. And you just call them up and some, fairly curt person on the other end is like, how big you want it? When do you want it? Okay, I'll drop it off today. It's that kind of thing.
I mean, it helps if you're in New York if you want to get that full experience.
That's true.
They sound different if you call in Alabama.
No, I bet they don't sound that different. Anyway, so wouldn't it be funny if every carting company was all run by people from Brooklyn? Just they're all over the country just running carting companies.
They're in construction too.
Yeah. So anyway, so some guy in a truck shows up and dumps off this dumpster in the street in front of our house. And
wait, they put the dumpster in the street?
We didn't want them tearing up our pavers in our driveway.
I know, but I can't believe you're allowed to do that.
You can. It just takes a quick permit from the village, but it's a wide street. There's room to go around it and everything.
Jeez, I've never seen that in the Boston area. It's always got to go on your driveway or on your lawn. And yes, it does destroy it.
You don't have streets made for the modern era. Your streets are preposterously tiny.
Marco's street isn't that wide.
My street's like 100 years old.
It's pretty wide. And that's a good point. Your street is, I don't know what your excuse is.
It's not as wide as yours, Casey. Yours is like a football field.
It is not.
My street is wide enough that a car can be parked on both sides of the street, parallel parked, and you can still drive through the middle.
Yeah, with one car.
One car could drive. So it's like 3 cars wide, basically.
See, my street, I would say, is 4 cars wide.
You could have Casey, you could have a bus on either side, and you could drive 2 buses past each other between them.
No, parallel parked on either side, and 2 cars.
Go get a tape measure and measure your street. It's huge.
Gosh. All right, fine. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, so we knew we were hiring the dumpster. Over the weekend before it arrived on Monday. Over the weekend before it arrived, we basically spent that time just staging a whole bunch of trash bags in the garage. By the way, this was a good time to have listened to Rec Diffs. That was all about space and I've heard Merlin over the years talk about It's All Too Much, this wonderful book, and literally so we were driving up to drop Adam off upstate. We on the way up there we listened to Rec Diffs, did the drop off, had some lunch. Right before we got in the car, I downloaded the audiobook for It's All Too Much, and we listened to that on the way home. And then we listened to it as we were cleaning everything out, for the first couple of days. We're almost done with it.
Just make sure you don't throw out your rock concert T-shirts.
Yes. I heard
one thing that
you've
learned is you got these books, you clean everything out, but don't make Merlin's mistake and get so enthusiastic that you throw out the one irreplaceable thing that you're going to regret losing for the rest of your life.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I don't think I have anything like that.
I don't know what the equivalent is. Maybe save your. If you had a Sega Saturn, you should save that, but you don't.
No, and I have all the video game systems I'm saving, of course. But I'm just I have and so fortunately, it was a really nice day. So first we put everything out on the curb for people to take, and then anything that was still there 24 hours later, we'd toss in the dumpster. And I put out tech stuff, old networking gear and stuff like that. This might come up later. I even got rid of my coffee roaster. I gave it away. Somebody took it.
What?
Yeah, I'm not roasting
anymore. Are you okay?
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get to that later. But anyway, I'm still drinking coffee. I'm just not roasting it anymore. But so a lot of stuff was taken. Stuff that was basically trash we threw away. Which this included literally every bit of food in the house. We have a lot of expired food. I found a jar of couscous from 2011.
Oh, neat.
That expired in 2011. So it's actually probably from 2009.
I think I could beat that stuff in my house. I think we have salad dressing in the refrigerator that beats that.
Yeah,
Oh my
so
gosh.
we just and we threw big black garbage bags, a lot of which was full of expired food or trash from the basement. We threw away so much stuff. And when the dumpster was first delivered and I started throwing all these bags in, I thought it's a 10 cubic yard dumpster. That's the smallest one they have. And I thought, oh, this is too big. We're never going to fill this up. Well, guess what? It's full. It took us 48 hours. It's full.
You could squish that down a lot. There's a lot of air in there.
There's some, but not as much as you would think. 'Cause, a lot of the space was like, there were a couple of like old broken pieces of furniture that like we tried having people take and nobody wanted them, so we had to throw those out. A lot of stuff from the basement, like screens for windows that we don't even have those windows anymore. Like we changed the windows years ago. Like 10 years ago, we got new windows. We have the screens for the old ones for some reason that we can't even use. Like stuff like that. Tons and tons of stuff that was just trash, just taking up space. And so, my God, it feels good. And so the crazy thing is, so we have this dumpster full of trash in front of our house. The house, when you're inside of it, does not look that different. It doesn't look like we're moving out. It looks like we just, tidied up a little bit. Like
all that trash was hidden.
Yes. It like my office closet, the basement, the attic. Like it's just, where did we get 10 cubic yards of trash in our house and have it disappear and have nothing look different?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it feels very good. This is something that I strongly recommend if you have a house with too much stuff in it. Listen to directives, then listen to It's All Too Much, then rent a dumpster. And it's a good time, except that I am now extraordinarily sore from just huge amounts of hauling that's gone into this. Things like in the basement we had, again, from like a renovation we did 12 years ago or 10 years ago, we had like an old door that like the door, it was like a custom sized door, and the door frame that it goes in doesn't exist anymore. And so like, why do we have this door in the basement? It's a custom size.
Because it's bespoke. That's why.
Yeah, so that's sitting outside now. I hope somebody takes it who wants like a, reclaimed door, and they can reclaim it from next to our dumpster. Hopefully I don't have to put it in the dumpster because my God, doors are heavy. But yeah, oh man, everything on my body hurts.
I'm sure people are listening to this and saying, "Oh, Marco, you're being so wasteful, throwing all these things in the garbage. You should have given them away. You should have recycled them. You should have put them up for sale. You should have found someone who needed them, or so on and so forth." There
actually was like a free cycle type of group. Like our neighbor was a member of this like Facebook Buy Nothing thing. This is apparently a thing. I didn't know about it, but I'm not very good at that. But they posted it there, and a lot of people came and took stuff. It was great.
Yeah, so I was saying, part of the, I don't know if they talk about this in It's All Too Much, but we talk about it, Merlin talks about it, and we talk about it in Rectives when I talk to him on the topic. Sometimes, that you can use that as an excuse to never do this. You can say, oh, well, I don't want to throw all this stuff out. I really should give it away. And you should, but if you never actually do find someone to give it to, then it just stays in your house, right? And so you're, getting the notion that we should get a dumpster and just chuck it all away, and then stopping yourself and saying, no, I should find something to give it away, but then not doing that either, doesn't help anybody. It keeps the junk in your house, and it also doesn't help the people that you were supposedly going to give it to. So though putting it all in a dumpster and having it go to a landfill seems wasteful and, it should be reused and so on and so forth, yes, that's true, but when you have to choose the lesser of multiple evils, the one that gets the stuff out of your house will probably make your life better more than the one where you just keep it in your house and feel guilty about it.
Right. And there are, certain things are easier to find better uses for than others. Things like clothing that's in decent shape. Usually you can find some place that will accept clothing donations, or, things that might have some value. You can often donate to thrift shops or something like that.
And sometimes they have big, places where you can shove them. You don't even have to talk to a person. They'll just have like, hey, take your old clothes and put them in this thing that looks like a dumpster, but it isn't.
Yeah. The problem though is that, like a lot of things in our modern world, a lot more of this stuff ends up getting thrown away behind the scenes than we realize, or that many people assume. Like, so, if you're worried, like, oh no, like, what if I just throw this away? I can donate it to somebody. Well, depending on what it is and where you are, there's actually a good chance it's going to get thrown away by them. So, this is not a good thing, but it is worth knowing in the sense that it's a good counter argument against yourself that, you don't have to necessarily not clean out your house because it might go to waste, because like it's going to go to waste anyway. It's going to waste now if it's in your house not being used and not being useful. But B, like almost any way you could get rid of it, there's a high chance of a lot of it being wasted. And so in a way that kind of it's crappy. It's it's kind of a negative way to look at it. But in a way, it's like, well, then I might as well get rid of it and improve my life and just try to not be so wasteful in the future when accumulating things in the first place, as opposed to like I have to keep this these 10 bags of junk forever because otherwise they'll go in a landfill. Like, well, then your house is just becoming a landfill at that point. Like that's not really helping anybody either.
Well, so you've had a fun vacation then, huh?
Oh my God. This is not a vacation. It's a break from school. This is not a vacation.
How's the dog poop situation like?
Well, he poops outside.
I mean, in the dumpster.
Oh, there's one bag for me. That's all. I think that's all so far.
Really? Interesting. If there's ever a dumpster in our neighborhood, it slowly fills with bags of dog poop.
Yeah. I mean, and I've been that guy because look, I understand. I'm sure people have reasons. But it's stupid that if I'm like walking my dog around these suburbs, there's no trash cans anywhere.
You have to escort the poop back to your house.
Yeah, like there is not like a town trash can anywhere. You can walk a mile and a half and see 0 trash cans. And that to me, like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. We do see a lot of litter that happens as a result. Like, I think overall it's probably more responsible city planning to put trash cans periodically somewhere. But also, who wants to have a trash can in front of their house? I understand why they're not there. Like, it's definitely a bit of a NIMBY problem. But it is kind of annoying. So yeah, I've totally been that guy. Like, I've if there's nobody around and I'm walking past the dumpster, I'll just flick it in there. But but I figure now all the years I've been doing that, like if somebody walks by my dumpster and throws their poop in there, that's fine. I know they owe it to me.
It's a circle of poop. Now we'll get everyone writing in telling us how harmful it is to have animal waste in with garbage.
Stupid.
Wait, where else are we supposed to put it?
I don't know, but I'm sure it's wrong.
Probably. I mean, look, believe me. There's going to be a lot of people who think half of what I just said was wrong. That's
well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I wanted to call it out to say, like, it's not ideal. Ideally, you would carefully find good new homes for all this extra stuff. But in reality, it would mean that you just never do it. And it would just fill your house until you died. And then someone would have an estate sale.
Well, or that person would hire a dumpster and just dump. Like, that's what happens.
Too.
Like, that's how a lot of these stories end, unfortunately. Like, you keep it until you die and then someone else throws it away for you. And that's no way to live. So, keep in mind, like a lot of this is the thing, like so much stuff that you don't realize gets thrown away, like store returns. So like I know there was a couple of articles recently about like online shopping returns and everything. Yeah, most returns to stores get thrown away. There are very few items that stores will actually resell if they've been returned. Like there's so much, recycling obviously is a big one. Like so much plastic recycling gets thrown away. We should be conscious about our waste for sure and our consumption for sure. There's lots of reasons to be conscious about that and to do that. But there's a reason why the whole reduce, reuse, recycle thing. Reduce is first. Because like once you have the stuff at that point, like most of it at some point, its useful life is going to end, and it's going to have to be sent somewhere. And sometimes you can find a good use for it with somebody else, or somebody wants to take it. A lot of times you can't. And so that if you want to be environmentally conscious about this, or more ecologically responsible, the better place to do that is the front part of this equation of like, buy less stuff, use less stuff. That's the better part of it. But don't get too high and mighty about what's going to happen after you're done with it, because chances are it's going to end up in a landfill regardless.
Fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're making progress, even though nobody can see it except outside in the dumpster.
I am recycling an absurd amount of cardboard. Well,
that's good.
So one of the things we did was we upgraded to a larger bed, and so we had this tremendous Casper box. So that, and I also pulled out of the basement 2 boxes for floor standing speakers that we use next to our TV. So pretty tall speaker, probably 3.5 feet tall. So a pair of speakers. Each one had its own individual box that was almost the size of a coffin, like a coffin for a short person. And so I had 2 of those plus the Casper king size box, which itself is probably about coffin-sized as well for a short person. And so I filled all 3 of those with other cardboard that had been flattened and packed and everything.
Goodness.
Oh my, it's so heavy. Again, the hauling. But I would say I could probably fill half a dumpster just with paper and cardboard.
My word.
Oh, so yeah, that's sitting next to my dumpster. It's a fun night.
Oh, wow.
So whatever's going on in the world of tech, I have no idea. I have missed all of it. Is anything going on?
Did you hear Apple bought Nintendo?
Oh yeah, that finally happened.
All right, let's do some follow-up. With regard to greedy Bluetooth from askatp, we got some feedback from Paul Violanti, who wrote, regarding Marco's Apple Maps Bluetooth predicament, there's a setting to have Maps speak driving directions through the car as phone call audio. So if you go to Settings, Maps, Spoken Directions, and then toggle Directions on Radio on, then that will act as though a brief phone call has just came in, and that will make sure that your car radio treats that as an, oh my goodness, you need to listen to this sort of scenario. So Paul writes, this works on my 2017 Toyota 4Runner. Even if I'm playing no audio, the phone will connect as if it was on a phone call to speak the directions.
Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, because this is like about my FJ, like, you have to be playing music or a podcast in order to hear any spoken map directions, because it has to be logically thinking it's playing something. And so I never thought about this. This is a good idea. I'm going to try it, but it is kind of annoying that like I would have to, like, this would have to be how it works over any Bluetooth, like not just that car radio. But it's interesting. Like, a lot of people forget or never knew these old Bluetooth modes where, like, you know, phone calls were treated differently than audio. And this was for lots of legacy technology reasons. There's like a whole different Bluetooth profile, and all these different codecs that were lower bandwidth. So they could have, you know, bidirectional communication over the very, very, very crappy latency or very crappy bandwidth of early Bluetooth versions. So there's all this stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, Bluetooth, you know, it's has a lot of crappy legacy stuff, but in this case, that actually will be helpful.
I feel for the person who had to come up with a copy for this option.
Yeah.
It's called Directions on Radio. Like, it's got to communicate this very, you know, the thing that Casey just said. So say you're in your car and you want to hear directions from the map, but you don't want to have audio playing. We'll turn this thing on and it'll do that for reasons that are even more complicated than this. But instead, it's just a toggle that says Directions on Radio. I wonder if people... I do wonder, like, how young do you have to be to not recognize radio as the thing in your car that makes noise, right? Because does anyone listen to? I suppose tons of people do listen to radio, but at least in my household, I can't remember the last time we had AM or FM radio turned on in any of our cars.
Yeah, I mean, and this is actually, like, you know, I was first making Overcast back in 2013 or so, and I actually briefly considered doing this kind of feature that would route the podcast audio through the phone call profile instead of the audio profile, for this reason that, like, some people actually had Bluetooth situations in their cars usually that supported the phone call mode, but not the audio mode.
Oh my.
And so this was thank God, a very short-lived period in Bluetooth's evolution where you would have that, you know, only have the phone and not have the music. But there are cars out there that have that situation. So I briefly thought about, like, a feature that would just do this. I even once looked into, like, what if I run one of those, like, you know, phone IP APIs, like Twilio or whatever back then? Like, what if I actually have a premium feature where you can call a phone number and have it just play your podcasts, like, over an actual phone call for other types of integrations? But fortunately, like, you know, by the time I would have actually gotten to that on my to-do list, the need for all of this stuff had vanished.
Speaking of cars, we have, it's a little bit of longer feedback, but I found it absolutely fascinating. So an anonymous person wrote in with regard to brake-by-wire systems. So this means, you know, there's no physical connection between the brake pedal and the brakes. It's all electronically controlled. That's brake-by-wire. So anonymous writes, I've spent most of the last decade working on brakes, and brake-by-wire brakes are actually stranger than how you portrayed them. When a car company calls brake-by-wire, they're primarily referring to a certain kind of electrically boosted brake system. system. Marco's Tesla has a Bosch iBooster, which is electrically boosted similarly to how electric power steering is boosted. It senses torque at a motor attached to the input rod and provides additional torque to aid the driver. These quote-unquote by-wire systems have the input rod connected to a master cylinder just as it would be in a car without power brakes. The master cylinder is sealed off from the rest of the system by a valve that is held closed during normal operation. The brake controller reads the master cylinder pressure and pedal stroke to determine the driver intent and then uses a separate electrically actuated boost cylinder to generate the brake system pressure. So it is technically by-wire as during normal operation there's no fluid connection to the wheels, but there is fluid involved on the input side and all of this actuation takes place in one piece of hardware. Some manufacturers, particularly Japanese automakers, use high-pressure accumulators in place of the boost cylinder, but the principle of operation is similar. This is done because only generating the pressure needed for a situation is more efficient, and subjective metrics are improved by isolating the driver from wheel behavior. Additionally, this provides a built-in failsafe where if the brake unit fails, the isolation valve will open itself or be opened by the ECU and provide the driver with a direct connection to the wheels. And then, John, I guess you were having an email conversation with this person. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was my response to that. So this is actually stuff that I had seen when the first brake-by-wire system came out, and we didn't go into the past show, but how do they deal with a situation where what if the electronics fail? Like when the very first brake-by-wire things came out, lots of people were nervous about that. So they had all these fail-safes where it's like a regular braking system, but that part of it is shut off normally. But if anything goes wrong, this valve opens up and it sort of default fails into being normal-ish brakes, right? And that was to make people feel more comfortable. So my response to this was to ask this person, I was just basically amusing. I said, I wonder if they'll ever go to the jet fighter route. So jet fighter planes for many, many years, decades, have also had fly-by-wire, and the same deal. The first plane that was fly-by-wire, all of the pilots and the engineers were all scared. It's like, what if the electronics fail? Electronics fail all the time. I want the pedals and the stick in my plane to be connected to the control surfaces. I don't want to rely on the electronics. If the electronics go out, I'm just going to fall out of the sky like a rock because I can't control anything anymore. And the way they eventually dealt with that in jet fighters and other sort of fly-by-wire airplanes is not by doing the thing that you just read, where it's like, well, it's like a regular hydraulic system, but we shut that off normally and do this by-wire thing, but then it fails, it opens back up. Instead, the way they deal with it in not all planes, but a lot of them, it's the same way they deal with a lot of things in aviation, massive redundancy. So there's not one electronic system. There's not two electronic systems, like three completely independent, redundant, fully functioning systems routed through different parts of the plane using different technologies. And it's like, if one of them fails, you switch to the backup one. If the backup one fails, you switch to the backup one. And that, in theory, it makes people comfortable enough that they're okay flying the plane. Never mind the fact that a lot of fighter planes are so unstable under normal operation that without the computers constantly adjusting the control surfaces, it will tumble out of the sky like a rock thrown by a toddler. But we'll set that aside for now. So that was my question. All right, so you just described the way this works now. Do you think cars will ever go to full by-wire with no physical backup and deal with it by saying, okay, we're really going to separate your pedals entirely from the hydraulic system, but to make it so you all don't die, we're going to double or triple or quadruple redundant, make the system redundant?
And so the person wrote, publicly available information would say yes, all the suppliers are preparing for that, especially as cars gain more and more advanced ADAS, which is advanced driver assistance systems. Some redundancy becomes necessary, and there are lots of benefits that can come from separating the driver controls from the actuator that you just might be able to imagine.
This is kind of one of those, like the person here is working on brake-by-wire systems, and I asked a question, I wonder if they're going to do X, and the person said, publicly available information would say yes. That's their way of saying, I'm not going to tell you we're doing that, but were you to look at publicly available information, you would see it leaning in that direction. So that's a confirmation without confirmation.
We are brought to you this week by Kolide. Kolide is a new take on endpoint management that asks the question, how can we get end users more involved? This is in contrast to old-school device management tools like MDM, which lock down your employees' devices without considering their needs or even attempting to educate them about the security of their laptop. Kolide is built by like-minded security practitioners who in the past saw just how much MDM was disrupting their end users, often frustrating them so much they would just throw their hands up and just switch to using their personal laptops without telling anybody. And in that scenario, everyone loses. So Kolide, on the other hand, is different. Instead of locking down a device, Kolide takes a user-focused approach. This communicates security recommendations to your employees directly on Slack. And after Kolide, device security turns from a black and white state into a dynamic conversation. This starts with the end users installing the endpoint agent on their own through a guided process that happens right inside their first Slack message. And from there, Kolide regularly sends employees recommendations when their device is in an insecure state. This can range from simple problems like the screen lock not being set correctly to hard-to-solve and nuanced issues like asking people to secure two-factor backup codes sitting in their downloads folder properly. And because it's talking directly to employees, Kolide is educating them about the company's policies and how to best keep their devices secure using real, tangible examples, not theoretical scenarios. So that's Kolide. Cross-platform endpoint management for Linux, Mac, and Windows devices that puts end users first for teams. That's Slack. Get endpoint management that puts the user first. Visit kolide.com/ATP to learn more and activate a free 14-day trial today. Enter your email when prompted to receive your free Kolide gift bundle after trial activation with no credit card required. Once again, that's kolide.com/ATP. That's spelled Kolide. Kolide with a K. KOLIDE.com/ATP today. Thank you so much to Kolide for sponsoring our show.
Aiden Traeger writes, I know you acknowledge the existence of third-party Apple Music apps on the show, but I wanted to pass along Mark Barrowcliff's 4th annual iOS Music Player Showcase from just last month. So, we were talking about, God bless, does anyone at Apple actually use the Apple Music app? I feel like we say this about a lot of things. This is becoming like the new if Steve were alive. Does anyone at Apple actually?
Well, I can tell you one thing. They definitely don't use the Mac version, and if they do, they definitely don't use the songs view.
It's what I feel like every corner of the music app on every platform is straight trash, and this is why I haven't divorced myself of Spotify, despite being cheap enough to want to, is because it's all garbage. I can't play something until I can, and then I'm in the midst of playing something. It's playing great. Like actually, just earlier today, I had an instance where I was not authorized to play something. Earlier in the day, I had an instance where I was playing an album. I think I was playing Thriller by Michael Jackson. I was playing the album, went through the first 3 or 4 songs, no problem. Just stopped. It knows it's ready to play the next song. I didn't stop it. I swear to you, I didn't stop it because this happens a lot. It's ready to play the next song, but it just froze. Like the app is functional, but it just froze. It got sleepy, I guess. I don't know. I was asking too much. I guess I just don't have enough empathy for the machine. Am I right? Anyway, so with regard to, hey, what could you do to fix this problem? Well, you could potentially just get a different music app entirely. And so Aiden reminded us of this list by Mark Barrowcliff. It's actually more than a list. It's a comprehensive review. And I started paging through this morning, and there's a lot here. So if you are interested, Mark does an amazing job of like laying out the landscape and showing what each of these things looks like and how they behave and what they're good at, what they're bad at, etc. But it's a really, really interesting roundup, and I strongly encourage you, if you're like me and hate everything about your music situation, check it out. You might like it.
And these are just iOS apps, right?
The iOS and iPadOS, yes. I do not believe there was anything on macOS. That's correct.
Yeah, there's 16 apps. 3 of them are new this year. I know there are similar clients available for the Mac, but I doubt there are 16 of them in total.
Yeah, this is so often the problem. Like, I've looked at a lot of these possible alternative apps over the years, and usually there is not an app that is Mac and iOS. There's some that are Mac only. There's a lot that are iOS only, but usually you have to give up one of those platforms to use one of these apps, or you can just have it use your Apple Music library, and which a lot of these apps do anyway, and then you can kind of just keep using the Apple version of music on the Mac. But that's the worst one. Like that's the one I don't want to keep using. That's the one I want to replace.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so bad. I mean, I hate to rag on these apps because you don't know what constraints they're dealing with. You don't know what they're up against.
Oh, I know what they're dealing with. Not caring. That's it. If they care, look, Apple has shown when they care about something, they put a lot of resources behind it. They put good talent on it. They incentivize the people in the company to work on it. And it's very, very clear that they do not value this, because if they valued it, they would put the resources behind it to make it happen, and they just don't.
And when you say they, to be clear, you're not talking about the developers who make the application, because they don't set those type of priorities.
Do any developers make the applications? Honestly,
I mean, someone's making it.
Look, a lot of times, what happens in Apple, a lot of times is certain apps or features actually go for a long span having a full-time staff of 0 people. The impression I've gotten over many people over many years is that people get moved around to different projects, or they move themselves around to different projects, and for your career to progress, you typically have to be moved around to like whatever the hot new thing is. And I've heard time and time again that it's hard for your career to advance and progress if you're doing the more boring stuff. Like what engineer or product manager wants to spend their time on the music app for the Mac? Like, I understand why it is this way, but that is ultimately a failure of management and structure. Like that is something that like the company has always had problems, like multitasking and keeping their interest in working on the things they've already started rather than going and starting something new constantly. And ideally, as they grow, they should be able to balance more things over time. In practice, that hasn't really happened nearly as much as you would think based on their size.
I mean, this is not a unique to Apple problem. Every company I've ever worked for experiences this. It is one of the most annoying to people like us who, really appreciate good software to see resources not be put into something that is quote unquote done or isn't the new hotness or doesn't drive revenue or isn't driving growth or whatever. And that's just the natural inclination of any company, the people who are managing it. Why am I going to dump all my money into a thing that I know is not going to produce any growth, does not have any big potential upside, exists the way it is now, has a dwindling number of users? If I made it 1,000% better, I wouldn't make 0.01% more money, and it wouldn't make anybody choose the Mac or the iPhone over. Like you can list off all these reasons why. Here's why we're not investing in that. And for the most part, that's right, except for where things just slowly start to decay, right? The people think, well, once it's done, it's done. And even though everyone knows intellectually, even at the highest levels of management, well, software is never done. You have to, at the very least, maintain it, and it's important to keep up with the times, and every few years, you really need to overhaul it. And Apple would say that they do that. It's just that they do that, like every company, way too slowly. They wait too long. They wait for something to become a festering sore to say, okay, well, we're never going to make any money off of this, but really it should be better because it's an embarrassment now, or it's actually hurting us reputation-wise, or like, and then someone seizes on that opportunity within the company to say, I've wanted to fix this app forever, and finally I get to bring a team up and we'll get a bunch of people who are enthusiastic and they'll fix it all. And that's not a cycle that we enjoy as users. We don't enjoy the app that we use every day slowly crumbling to dust until it becomes such a big crisis that Apple turns its gaze briefly to it and throws some people and money at it and resurrects it, and then we begin the cycle again. It would be better if everything was maintained evenly, but that's not just, it's very difficult in my experience working for several different companies over my career. It's very difficult for companies to have that discipline to say, we are going to keep a team of people on, let's say, terminal for the Mac, right? And we are never going to have 0 people on it. We're never going to have, I think Terminal, for example, has had fractional people. Like it would have one person who's responsible for Terminal and 5 other apps, right? So it's got, 20% of a person on it for 5 years. It's like, but we're going to have, what I always call it in my pitches inside companies, because I'm always complaining about this, is you need to have a standing army, which is probably a bad analogy for militaristic reasons or whatever, but a standing army for everything that you care about, that you can never disband them. You can never say, terminal's done, don't need any people on it. There always needs to be a terminal team. Doesn't need to be a big team, but it literally needs to be there forever. Like forever? What do you mean forever? Yeah, if you ship terminal on the Mac and you still sell Macs and terminal still comes with them, you always have to have at least some small team whose only job is to continue to maintain and improve terminal. And there are anti-patterns there as well, because if you have that team, eventually that team gets bored and decide that terminal is going to become like a, an text-based MMO or something, right? Like, because they
get like rewrite-itis, we're going to rewrite this all in Swift UI.
Right. So that's part of the discipline as well. But we're so far at the other end of the spectrum where it just gets abandoned, right? That I feel like we could swing back in the other direction. And what you mentioned about career is also true. If you're going to do that and have a standing army who are on these applications, you need to not punish them for being on the boring project. If they're doing an awesome job and every year, Terminal is the most beloved application on the Mac, and it's so good that, third-party terminal apps have trouble competing. And, again, there's with this particular thing where we're talking about Apple, it's a little bit weird because they're also the platform owner, and that's another thing that this discipline will get you is you'll have the conversation. Should we be shipping insert application here with the Mac, or should we allow third parties to handle this entirely? In fact, there's a topic about that we'll get to in some future episode of ATP. And by being forced to have a standing army, a team assigned to every single thing, it makes you think, do we really need to be shipping Graphing Calculator? Or do we care about Graphing Calculator anymore? Or should we let that be a third-party opportunity because we don't want to fund a team that for the next 20 years with even just one or two people, all they do is make sure Graphing Calculator is improving every year, right? Be honest with yourself. Do we care about Graphing Calculator, or is it just there because someone wrote it once and it still works? So those are all things that should happen inside Apple and should happen inside every company, but it is not easy. It's not easy. From the outside, it just seems like just make all the apps better, right? You have unlimited money, but that's never really true, and money doesn't translate directly into developer effort, so it's tricky, but I agree that Apple, particularly in the case of the music app, and particularly in the case of the music app on the Mac, is not doing well.
I think in some ways, like, how, over the last couple of decades, some of the more enlightened and some of the big tech companies have intentionally created career paths because the original problem was like programmers would get elevated to management as they advanced in their careers, but not all programmers can or want to be managers. And so a lot of places have developed career tracks for programmers to advance their careers while still just being programmers, not like directing a whole team of people.
They're called ICs, Marco.
Yes, sorry. Yes, you can tell how much experience I have.
Individual contributors.
But, you can see how, like, in a way, like it was like the industry had to develop and stabilize and mature to some degree before it had the introspection and be like, actually, we need to kind of create a structure here that creates better results in this area, right? And I think this is one of those areas of, like, the industry now is so big and so developed and mature. There's a lot of boring technologies that we just kind of need to keep working, and they're never going to be exciting to work on anymore, or probably, or at least rarely going to be exciting to work on. But you can't have, these big tech companies that have these big old developed platforms, all these different apps and parts to them. They have to incentivize and reward the maintenance of boring things over time. So we have so much now that we've built as an industry over the last 20, 30 years that we still need. We need all of this to keep working. Ideally, it would slowly even get better and have a staff of more than zero, working on it at some point. But this isn't, as you mentioned, this isn't exclusive to Apple, but Apple still does a pretty bad job of this. We need those things to have somebody looking out for them. And if the incentives in the company for things like, career promotion and excitement and reward are not going to reward that, we need to start creating paths for that to be rewarded, like inside these companies.
Well, and they exist. Like in Apple, there is a title, like there's Distinguished Engineer, Scientist, and Technologist is a title at Apple. And my understanding, which is very limited, and I might have this wrong, but my limited understanding is that's basically a nerd's nerd that has just been a super nerd for their entire lives and is still writing code, even though they are in the perhaps, twilight of their career. And it's not because they're no good. It's the opposite, because they're extremely good. And I've seen in many companies these sorts of things, because what you said is right, that oftentimes, especially up until 10, 20 years ago, there would be a fork in the road or really there wasn't even a fork, I should say. There was just a really right-angled turn where even if you really love coding, well, you're old enough and wise enough that, well, you're going to be a manager now and that's that. So, KISS, Xcode, Visual Studio, whatever, goodbye. You're just going to live in, Excel and PowerPoint for the rest of your career. Have fun. And it's gotten better, but it's still not great. And I don't know. Apple Music is just so frustrating because when I got exposed to Apple, which by John's metric was yesterday, but in reality was the mid-aughts, they were the music company. Like more than almost anything else, they were the music company. They were the iPod company. They were the iTunes company. And it makes me sad, perhaps more than most, because that's kind of my intrinsic and default view of Apple is that they're so good at music, among other things. I mean, in the same way that, like, I guess in the 80s, and John, correct me when you're ready, but in the 80s, they were the publishing company, among other things. And they were so good at publishing, and in the aughts, they were so good at music. And to see Apple trying in some regard, with Apple Music, trying to be modern and trying to be forward thinking and getting big into streaming. And yet the client applications, which is the thing that you would think would be their bread and butter, it's just such garbage. It really is. I hate poking fun at other people's work, but it's just so bad, you guys. It's so frustrating.
It's nobody's work. That's the problem.
Maybe that's it.
I think Apple Music has, especially on iOS, has a lot of people working on it. I mean, I think it is somewhat, we've talked about this before, probably hampered by the back end, which seems like it's old and creaky, not particularly responsive. And I bet the front end team has very limited control over what the back end does. And part of the reason it's so, creaky and crumbling is because it is from when Casey started getting into Apple. It's old, like in the grand scheme of things, really does need to be torn down and rebuilt. In particular on the Mac, splitting out the music app was not really the rebuild we were looking for. On iOS, I think it's definitely doing better than the Mac version, but it's still weird and buggy. I tend to blame a lot of the server-side stuff for that. But getting back to having to have sort of a team on every project, a standing army and all your things forces you to do, I think if you had that conversation about music, they would agree with Casey. They would say, well, no, music is a thing that Apple needs to do. Not just because we used to be the music company when we made the iPod, but just because it is a core activity that our customers do with our products. It is not graphing calculator, right? It is one of the big pillars of things people do with their phones and their Macs and their iPads and the things that we sell. So this is a quick conversation. Should music be better? Yes. Should we stop doing music? No. And it's a service behind it too. So you got service revenue. Like everything says, please fix music. I'm not sure what's taking them so long. I think they have made some improvements in recent years, but it is definitely in need of a freshening and an overhaul. And maybe it's just so complicated now because they have the legacy of people like Marco who are still using it like iTunes. So they've got to support all those features. Otherwise Marco will be sad, but then they're trying to also be Spotify, but Spotify doesn't have that legacy that they have to deal with. And it's a difficult situation, but this is definitely an area that needs improvement. But if they ask me, I'm going to say do photos for families first.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
That's probably in worse shape. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just that's the thing. Like I don't think this is one of the situations where like it's not like any one person trying to do a bad job. It's that the structure of the incentives and the way things work, the way people move around, like it's that kind of stuff that has to be addressed through like, structural changes and management. Like it's that kind of thing. It's not like, there's some villain keeping music down. It's just, it's like, when you look at Spotify's crappy app, like Spotify's app should not be a breath of fresh air in any way to any Apple customer because Spotify's app is terrible. And, we are accustomed as Apple users, at least we used to be, to a higher standard of how good our first-party apps or the apps that we're accustomed to seeing from our community, to how good those are. Like that's kind of where we came from. Now, yes, I know the iPhone is much bigger than, everything else, but we are accustomed to culturally a high bar. For like our apps should be really good, and apps on the Mac and first party apps from Apple should be really good because historically they usually were. And we're at a point now where in a lot of areas, including this, they're not. And that's on them to create the conditions to turn that around. Because again, like none of us should ever look at Spotify and say, "Ooh, this part's nice." Because no part of Spotify is nice. It's garbage. Just in certain areas, it's just less garbagey than Apple's current music app.
See, but that's the thing. One of the areas where it's less garbage than Apple Music is it actually plays music reliably.
I know
that's an area where it's less garbage.
Agreed, and that's why because it is a terrible app. And
otherwise, yes, you're right.
It's a web view and it's a bad web view at that. It's an even worse web view than the old Apple Music Store things were, and we shouldn't be looking at that and saying, "Ooh, this is better than ours in any way," because Spotify's app is garbage and Apple can very much do better. And so I wish they would in this area because I don't want to use Spotify for lots of reasons, many of which are political. But certainly, I don't want to be tempted by any part of their app being better. We are sponsored this week by Caséta by Lutron, smart lighting control. This is brought to you by Lutron, pioneers in smart home technology. Now, a lot of people think, like I did, that you need smart bulbs to get smart lighting, or you need special smart outlets or whatever. No, there's a much smarter way. Caséta uses smart dimmers and switches that replace the switch in your wall. And this has huge advantages. So number one, it's still a physical switch in the wall. So anybody who walks into the room doesn't have to know about your special app or special voice commands and how to turn your lights on and off. They can just use the switch on the wall. But then you also have all of the smart functions that smart bulbs and stuff can offer, in addition to having a real physical switch. So you can also do things like command it with apps or HomeKit or voice control, and you can automate it. You can have special sensors triggering certain actions. You can automate it based on things like sunrise and sunset, times of day, different conditions. It's super smart, but it's still controlled by a switch in the wall. So that means anybody can use it at any time. And I personally like this because I can choose my own light bulbs. I'm a light bulb nerd. I like to pick, whatever is the best brightness and CRI for what I'm looking for without having to limit myself to only, the smart bulbs. But I can still have all the smart functionality with Lutron. Any light bulb controlled by the switch becomes smart with Lutron Caséta. It's just so great. And I have found this to be rock solid reliable. I cannot say that about any other smart home automation kind of system that I've tried. And I've tried a lot of them, believe me. Caséta is rock solid. It works every single time. It's incredible, like how much better it is than everything else. So see for yourself with the wonderful Caséta system. There is so much you can do with this, and it's so much better to replace the switch and make that smart than to try to make all the bulbs and stuff smart. So get smart lighting the smart way with Caséta by Lutron Smart Switches. Learn more at lutron.com/ATP. That's lutron.com/ATP. Thank you so much to Lutron Caséta for sponsoring our show.
I would like to do the thing that I do every once in a while, which is I attempt to take a victory lap on something and then I'm shot down. So here we go, everyone. I would like to tell you that I was listening to the aforementioned Reconcilable Differences, episode 176, The Curse of Convenience. And first of all, I do love that show so darn much. It is so good. But beyond that, I was listening and John was describing how you are going through old photographs, like, printed photographs and scanning them and so on and so forth, which, as with everything John talks about, is somehow riveting, even though it shouldn't be. But here's where the victory lap comes in. You were geotagging these photos. And I was lamenting to you just a couple of months ago that I think it's preposterous that Mr. Metadata himself didn't want to put geotags in any of his pictures. And I said, you should do that. You never know when you might want it. And listen to that. Apparently, John, you're geotagging your photos. And I am doing my victory lap as we speak.
Well, I think you are aided there by the incredibly slow scanner I have. Because part of the problem, if you listen to the episode, unfortunately, this part is in the members only after shows. So you'd have to go to relay.fm/rd/join, I think. I'm just going off the top of my head there, to hear the member thing. But yeah, the problem is doing something like this, scanning photos, there's a lot of downtime where you're waiting for the scanner. And so you're looking for other things to do. And part of what I'm doing with that time is taking the previous batch and retouching them and rotating them and fixing them. And then while I'm in there, I'm like, okay, well, I've got them all looking nice, and the scanner's only halfway through. So what do I do now? Well, might as well geotag them. Like I said on the show, part of what I'm doing with geotagging is because how can you geotag photos from a long time ago? Well, if they're like in my childhood home, I know the address. So I just do that. And as I said on the show, some of them that are beach photos, I know the spot on the beach. So I just drop the pin, right, in Google Maps, like with the satellite view, and just get the latitude and longitude because I literally know down to, 10 feet where it was taken from. And that's a fun thing to do while I wait for the scanner to finish. Yeah, so I don't do it with all of them. I can't do it with all of them, but it's something for me to do while I wait for the scanner to slowly grind. And here's the thing I don't understand about the scanner. I'm sure there's a good explanation for this, but I'm putting multiple photographs on a flatbed scanner at the same time, right? Just because, I figured that's more efficient, but put a bunch down in there. And flatbed scanner, it's got a little bar, I think, that shines light and moves across and scans, right? And the bar goes across the width of the thing, goes, and I imagine it just lighting up a row at a time of the image and recording the pixel values and that little, I'm assuming that's how it works. I don't know the details, right? But what I expect to happen is I line up all the photos on the flatbed scanner, and the little bar goes and just goes from one end of the flatbed to the other and scans all the pictures. Because if I had put a flat piece of paper there, like the scanning bed is, I don't know, it's like 11 inches by 14 inches, whatever it is. If I put a piece of paper filling like the whole area, it would scan that. It would just go and scan the whole page, right? But when I put 5 photos there in the image capture app and I like show, and I say, I want this to come out as multiple files, it does one pass for each photo. So it goes,
weird.
And scans the first photo, and then it goes back to the beginning, scans the second one, and goes back to the beginning, scans it, and that's why it takes for freaking ever. And I think that's incredibly inefficient, and I don't understand why it's doing that. So anyway, that's why I'm geotagging photos now.
Hey, I don't care how you got there. I just care that you got there. I'm excited. And then since we're in apparently the John Power Hour, would you like to tell us about the feedback to your absolutely delightful streaming app spec?
So I'm making up for the fact that I didn't post any blog posts last year, so now I've done 2 this year, so I'm maintaining my 1 per year average.
Now wait,
like I said,
if one blog post is a follow-up to one that came shortly before, does that count as like a whole separate one, or is it like more like a 1.5 situation?
No, it's a whole separate one.
Okay,
it's got a different URL. It's got a title. It's the whole thing. So the last one where we talked about streaming apps and my spec for the bare bones features that they should all have, and then I said I wanted to do a post about the feedback I was getting, and I did. It's we'll put a link in the show notes. The title is very similar to the other one, so some people might think, oh, I already read this one, but this is just about the feedback. I'm not gonna go through it all here again. I talked about it more in Rectives, but I'm just going to tell you that the upshot is, the overwhelming feedback, like 80% of all the feedback I got from people was people saying, I hate it when I launch a video streaming app and I can't continue watching the thing I was previously watching. Everybody complains, but it's just like the number one complaint, not even close. So much so that like it just, I was in the car with my daughter and I was saying I was going to talk about it on a podcast. She doesn't care about technology or, video. She watches streaming stuff all the time and we have all these streaming services, but she doesn't care about apps or whatever. So I said, what do you think about streaming apps? I'm going to be talking about it on a podcast. She's like, I had to sort of explain what the heck a streaming app is, like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, whatever. Like not the shows that are on them, but like the actual thing you're using to watch the shows. What do you think about those? And you could tell she really hadn't given them much thought because, kids just take things for granted. This is just how the world works. You can watch TV shows on your magic little device. I was like, yeah, but if you think about the apps, like, do you have anything to say about them? Any kind of opinion? And she said, I find it kind of annoying when I go to the app and I can't find the show I was watching. It was literally the only thing she said, totally unprompted. I didn't mention anything about it. I'm like, this is just like the original sin of streaming apps. And, I go into this post a further explanation of like why that is. Someone from Hulu saying that we actually did A/B testing and determined that it drove engagement. And so like the theory that it drives more engagement is not just a theory. It's a real thing that happened and it caused them to change their apps to make them worse. For people who won't read it, I will just throw in the money sentence that I almost bolded but didn't. The idea that you have some kind of engagement-based metric where like, well, if we make it harder for you to find the show you are watching, you'll try more new stuff, and that's actually good for you because you'll discover new shows and do all this other, all these other things. You can convince yourself that this is better because it will make the company more money, or even if you can convince yourself that it's better for the customer because it will help them discover new shows and they'll be happier in the end because they discovered that amazing show that they wouldn't have otherwise discovered. Even if you agree with all that, which I don't, but even if you stipulate that for the sake of argument, sure, that's all true. People hate it. They hate not being able to find the thing they were watching. And the adaptation of this old saying, which I could not find the source of, so I just linked the Quote Investigator, was people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that applies to applications as well. Mm-hmm. People will not remember that your app helped them find their new favorite television show. They'll remember that your app was frustrating, and they will eventually associate that frustration with your brand. And so even if it is better, which I don't think it is, to intentionally make it harder to find what people were watching, everyone hates it. Please don't do it. We'll see if anything changes. But, seeing the incentives so clearly outlined like this, it seems like nothing will change because as far as these companies concerned, the applications are working as designed. And in the end, as has been discussed. Really, like, the TV shows matter, and we will suffer through almost any application to get to the play button to make it happen. So probably not a lot of incentive for this to change, but boy, it's kind of a shame.
Yeah, I've been loving your posts about this, and I'm sad that I'm not going to get another post about anything until 2023. So it's been a fun ride.
Well, who knows? Stranger things have happened.
Indeed. So we have a few things to clear out in the main show. I don't know how much time we'll have for it, but we wanted to start tonight with the actually fairly old news at this point about NVIDIA, Intel, and ARM, or most especially NVIDIA and ARM. So we talked, actually, I guess it was like a year or two back. When was that? It was September of 2020, which I feel like it was yesterday, but time is a flat circle. We talked about how NVIDIA was trying to acquire ARM, ARM being, how would you describe ARM? I don't know. I feel like I'm going to butcher this if I make an attempt at it.
The company that came up with the instruction set and CPU, many of the CPU designs that are used in cell phones and many other things. They're small, low-power chips, and when people started making smartphones, the ARM chips were ideally suited to it because they were small and low power. And eventually Apple decided to put ARM chips in the iPhone, and then it started making its own chips based on the ARM instruction set, and the rest is history.
Indeed. Thank you. So I think it was late January, early February, there were some rumblings that, this acquisition may not go through because a lot of regulators were really unhappy about it across the entire world. And then sure enough, looks like February 8th, the deal collapsed. Quoting from Daring Fireball, SoftBank Media Group Corp has shelved its blockbuster sale of ARM limited to U.S. chip maker NVIDIA Corp, valued at up to $80 billion, citing regulatory hurdles that will instead seek to list the company. Britain's ARM, which named a new CEO on whatever Tuesday that was, said it would go public before March 2023, and SoftBank CEO, which owns most, if not all of it, indicated that it would be in the United States and most likely on the NASDAQ. So it is going to be its own thing sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, ARM is not unique, but part of what makes ARM different than other CPU makers is that they don't actually, have to manufacture the chips themselves. They will license the instruction set, and they will license CPU designs to people, and they will license to Apple the ability to make their own chips that are compatible. So, if you want to make a chip, ARM will license you. Here's a design for a chip. Tell me how big you want it or whatever. But you can also get, what is it called? The architecture license, where ARM just says, okay, well, you just make your own chips. We'll tell you how the instructions are supposed to work, but you go ahead and you can make it any way you want. And so when NVIDIA wanted to buy them, I'm not entirely clear what people are scared about from antitrust, other than just two big giant companies that are really important to the world combining together. Doesn't seem like it would be good for competition. All right. So, but anyway, the deal looks like it's not going to go through. And the reason I think this is relevant is a topic that has come up a lot on the show, especially before the ARM-based Macs came out. We were talking about the possibilities, like what will that be like? They'll lose, Apple will lose compatibility with Windows. All the people who enjoy doing development on x86 because they're going to deploy on an x86 server somewhere will lose that uniformity between having the same instruction set in both places. And really, we're talking about x86 64 here, not plain old x86. But anyway, and the NVIDIA deal, if NVIDIA had purchased them, a lot of people thought that it would be the kick in the pants that ARM needs to finally sort of fulfill its destiny and, strike down Intel and do what I was painting as the optimistic scenario, sort of sweep through the whole industry. And Apple's move to ARM wouldn't end up being something that hurts it in the long run, because eventually everything would be ARM. PCs would be ARM, servers would be ARM, phones, iPads, and Macs would be ARM, and then we'd be back to where we were when everything was x86, where you get a Mac that's x86 and you deploy on your server as x86, you can run Windows natively at x86, right? That we would get back to that state. So that we would just be kind of like a bump in the road where for a while Apple moved to ARM before the rest of the world did, but eventually Windows and the server also moved to ARM. And in fact, the phones and iPads were already on ARM, and we have this beautiful future where everybody uses ARM processors and they license the ARM instruction set from this one company. And it's not great that one company controls it all, but really, since everyone can license it and Apple makes its own chips and everyone can make their own chips if they want to, it is actually a more competitive landscape than when x86 dominated. And the argument is the reason that hasn't been happening is because ARM, this relatively little company that doesn't even make its own chips and just licenses the instruction set and, and chip designs that it makes to other people, it's not in a position, it doesn't have the people, the skills, or maybe even the desire to do what it would take to displace x86. And what it would take is all of the sort of tool chain stuff, compilers, software support. Like there's a big software component to sort of that Intel has with x86 now that ARM doesn't yet have, that has been slowing ARM's rollout. Even on things like the server, where it seems like such a clear win. Like Amazon's been rolling out ARM servers, and they're faster, they're cheaper, they're lower power. It's like, what's the holdup? Like, why isn't everybody deploying on ARM and AWS? It's so much better than x86. What's the downside? And the downside is, well, there's a whole ecosystem around x86 that's been there for decades, that is very mature and it's been built up, and it's taking a long time to go through that. So if NVIDIA bought them, it would be like, well, NVIDIA's got tons of money, and NVIDIA has the software expertise. They know how to make an ecosystem. It's the whole reason everyone's using NVIDIA stuff for like Bitcoin mining and crap. And, before that, CUDA and all the NVIDIA performance with game drivers. NVIDIA understands that there's a market they care about. They have to give you like the full stack, including all the software support and the tooling and everything. And they can, get that going. Now that this deal has been, shelved, I think it's good that the deal didn't go through, because I don't like these big companies combining, but I kind of was looking forward to a silver lining of this deal being that maybe it would accelerate ARM, because I do want ARM to replace x86 everywhere, because I don't like, Apple being the odd one out with the Mac on ARM and PC still on x86. I see no reason why the whole world can be one big happy family all on ARM at the same time. There already is Windows for ARM, but is it more popular than x86 Windows? No. There already is ARM in the server, but is it more popular on the server side than x86? Not yet, right? So maybe we'll just get there more slowly now, but I thought this was worth noting that potentially a thing that could have accelerated this has been canceled. Again, I think this is the right decision. I don't like it when very big, very powerful companies combine into one company. I feel like that's bad for everybody involved, but I was kind of looking forward to that silver lining.
Yeah, I hear you. You know what's funny? This is tangentially related. I don't recall having heard a lot of moaning or complaining about people who were previously like virtualizing Windows and are now in the Apple Silicon world and can't do that anymore. And, that would have been me several years ago, because I was living in VMware Fusion every day to do my work in Visual Studio. And I think a lot of that is because the environment and landscape keeps changing, and a lot of my limited understanding of what's going on in C# these days is that a lot of work is done on Visual Studio Core, or .NET Core or something like that, which is a cross-platform thing that apparently, I saw a tweet recently, I won't be able to find it, but apparently came from Silverlight of all places, which is really weird and funky. But anyways, it's fascinating to me that, when I went to using a Mac in the late aughts, it was a relatively crazy thing to do at the time, because, especially living in a Windows world. Not. No, for me, because I was living in this Windows world for like work and stuff.
You're a Windows developer. You wouldn't be a Windows developer on a Mac.
Right.
Exactly. And so, sorry, that was ambiguous, though. I apologize. So anyways, so it was a little bit bananas at the time, but now it seems like there are very few people I personally haven't heard of anyone who is really burned or is like lingering on Intel on account of these sorts of problems. Now, maybe you spent $15,000 to $20,000 on your computer setup, and that's why you're lingering on Intel. Hi, John. But for people with normal computers, I haven't heard any real problems with it, which is really fascinating and really cool.
Well, speaking of companies that have the skills and the experience building ecosystems, Microsoft, in theory, has all the tools. It's got plenty of money. They know how to build an ecosystem with software tooling, from all the way from the compilers and the IDEs to the libraries that go with it. Like, there should, in theory, be no reason that Intel can't shift the entire Windows PC market over to ARM. But it's been, Apple has gone through multiple processor transitions and has done each one better than the last, and Microsoft has never done it. And I don't know if Microsoft is institutionally unwilling to do a processor transition or incapable. Windows on ARM shows they're not unwilling, because why would they have even tried to do Windows on ARM? But they have not done a good job. It's been this weird product that was kind of separate from the regular Windows, because you don't want to screw with the regular Windows. Like, their market is different than Apple's market. It is much bigger. It involves more people who are resistant to change. I understand their task is different than Apple's. Apple is, especially the Mac in particular, is still small enough that Apple can kind of do what they want and have all these users who are very dedicated to it or whatever. But I feel like on a long enough timeline, Microsoft should be able to pull this off. So they've had a couple of false starts with Windows on ARMs. I'm hoping, there's no reason that Microsoft can't do it eventually. And even if the server battle goes differently for whatever reason, Intel starts manufacturing on TSMC 3 nanometer and come roaring back and fight back against the ARM chips that are outperforming them on the server. At the very least, Microsoft should be somewhat motivated to not be tied to x86. I mean, Microsoft has had it good because, they've got Intel and AMD, so they have two possible choices and they're always fighting each other or whatever. But Microsoft's ambitions with Surface really lend themselves, in the same way that Apple's do, to not only using ARM chips, but making their own ARM chips for their own hardware. And it seems like for a decade or more now, Microsoft has really wished that it could be Apple. Like, the hardware that it makes is Apple-ish, not in the sense of like what the hardware looks like, although sometimes it is that, but in the sense that Microsoft likes the idea that they can control the whole stack and give an experience that PC vendors were not giving. And they can do that even better with ARM. So I really hope they pull it off, because I don't like, the honeymoon period when I had my cheese grater. Or cheese graters, I guess. Well, my one cheese. Yeah, just one, right? Yep.
Wait, now we're talking about the Macs again, though, right? Not the Parmesan creators?
Yeah, the Power Mac G5 was in the same case, but that was PowerPC. Anyway, that honeymoon decade where everyone was on x86 and was all one big happy family, except we had the good OS and the nicer hardware. I hope we can get back to that again.
Is anybody making like PC ARM processors outside of the server space, though? Are there any consumer-facing PC ARM CPUs that Microsoft could even sell ARM Windows for?
Yeah, they do. They sell ARM-based hardware with, I think it's like I don't know what the names or numbers are of them, but actual ARM CPU designs that are PC or laptop caliber chips, and they put them in their Surface. Are they in the Surface products? Whatever they sell with the ARM chips in them, there are ones that are there. I don't think there's anything around that would rival like a Mac Pro. I mean, Apple doesn't even have one of those yet, but there are options.
Is there anything even rivaling a MacBook Air?
Yeah, definitely.
Like the M1 is so good. Like, is there anything?
Rivaling in terms of it's in the same power envelope and it runs Windows okay, but no, they're not as good as the M1 because Apple is on top of the game in terms of desktop caliber ARM chips for sure. But I mean, there was some other stories down in the topics thing about other companies getting in on this. Was it Google at the very least? A bunch of other companies are like, we should do what Apple did. We shouldn't buy these CPU designs from ARM, or who else makes them?
Qualcomm makes a lot of them, I think.
Yeah. Like, we shouldn't get those because then you just have a choice of what they offer to sell. If we make our own chips, we can make them exactly the way we want. The same way that Apple made their chips so they perform well with Apple's applications. They do what Apple needs it to do. Right? We should all do that, shouldn't we? But if you look at how long it took Apple to execute that plan, it is not something you turn around in a year. That is a many year, 5 year, 6 year, 10-year project that some people are only embarked on maybe a few years ago. So it's going to take a while for the fruits of that labor to appear. But I hope Apple has shown them the way to say, if you want really good chips that are well suited to your products, you got to do it yourself.
All right, so this also happened a little while ago. We are. What is the line from Godfather? We're handling all the family business or whatever.
That's it.
We're trying to clean everything out. So a while ago, a developer corrupted sort of an NPM library, or two NPM libraries, Colors and Faker, which broke thousands of apps. So what the crap did I just say? So NPM is Node Package Manager. It's a way to get other people's code into your apps in certain contexts. And there were two super popular ones, one called Colors, one called Faker, that the developer of these broke those deliberately. And and that caused quite a kerfuffle. So let me read from bleepingcomputer.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. The developer behind popular open source NPM libraries Colors, aka colors.js on GitHub, and Faker, aka faker.js on GitHub, intentionally introduced mischievous commits in them that are impacting, or at this, when this was written, impacting thousands of applications relying on these libraries. Yesterday, users of popular open source projects such as Amazon's Cloud Development Kit, AWS CDK, were left stunned, I tell you, on seeing their applications print gibberish messages in their console. GitHub has reportedly suspended the developer's account, and that too has caused mixed reactions. Quote, removing your own code from GitHub is a violation of their terms of service. WTF? This is a kidnapping, quote, responded software engineer Sergio Gomez. Quote, the responses to the Colors/Faker author sabotaging their own packages are really telling about how many corporate developers think they are morally entitled to other source developers' unpaid labor without contributing anything back, wrote one Twitter user. So this is a really interesting case study in how open source affects the world, or the corporate world, if not the world, insofar as here's a library that was written by some person, presumably with little to no compensation by darn near anyone. It gets used darn near everywhere, and this person, kind of justifiably, is a little perturbed that they haven't gotten compensated for any of this. So they take matters into their own hands and kind of ruin it, which is perhaps not the most mature approach, but is, I suppose, within their rights. I think.
Well, I mean, you can't say, okay, I'm going to do this work for free and anybody can use it. And then when a bunch of people use it, say, wait, now I want money. Like, that's kind of on you at that point. So it, obviously, like I think that's a huge jerk move to do something like this. And that's also a quick way to, probably harm your chances of working in the industry again in the future for anybody else ever again. So that's also, it's both a jerk move and also a stupid move. Like you shouldn't do it.
Yep.
But that being said, like there are a lot of underlying issues here. I mean, first of all, this is admittedly, like if you want, next to the entry of not invented here syndrome in the dictionary is a picture of me. So from that point of view,
that is excellent self-awareness, Marco.
Yeah, like with that adequately disclaimed, I try to use as little third-party code in my apps as possible, which is often like damn near zero. But the idea that I would have any kind of deployment of an app where not only am I using third-party code, but that it is auto-updating that third party's code without my first downloading it manually and testing it? Like, what? I mean, I know that you can use a package manager to pin to a certain version. I know that. But I bet a large part of this problem is that a lot of people aren't doing that. Possibly even the majority of people aren't doing that. And that, to me, that is just incredibly irresponsible programming practices. And whatever you want to say about third-party code, I'm sure everybody likes it more than I do. But if you're going to use third-party code, you download you use one version of that code. And if you want to have some process where you occasionally check for updates and test them, great. But to have it auto-update in any of your deployments, that's nuts to me. That isn't just living on the edge. That's negligence. And you should not do that.
Look at Marco advocating testing. He did it twice. Oh, you're going to get the new thing. How can you tell whether the new version works? Well, you'll test. I know you meant manually testing it, I guess.
Yes.
But, anyway, yeah. So you can definitely pin versions. I mean, part of the reason that version pinning, that it is a more complicated topic for NPM in particular. We've talked about this in the past, that the way Node has grown up, the culture and the environment is that there are tons and tons of tiny little libraries, thousands and thousands and thousands of dependencies for even a trivial Hello World website using a common web framework. They're very, very small.
Did we give people too many hardware resources? Is that the problem? Like they don't know what to do with it, so they want to burn it all up.
No, it's more of a cultural issue because it's not like they're it's still just 2 lines of code, and 2 lines of code performs the same whether it's in one file or another one. Like it's not, especially for a server to resident application, it's not that big of a deal performance wise. But you could argue the granularity is stupid, but it is what it is. But what that means is if you pin things, then you fall subject to another one of the things that ails the Node.js culture community, which is security problems, right? if you have so many dependencies, people are constantly finding security problems in them. And if you pin your versions, like wait 2 weeks and now suddenly your application is vulnerable to 50 different things, right? And so you can say, well, then you should do that manual process where you test everything or whatever. It is a force pulling you back in the direction of saying, I'm going to, honor the semantic versioning, and I'm going to pin to, I'll take any patch version or I'll take any minor version, right? As long as it's not a major version upgrade, I'll auto take that one because I will assume those are security patches or performance fixes or whatever. I won't pin it all the way down. I'll pin it part of the way down. And the reason this comes up in this particular story is like, that's fine. That probably works. That's probably a reasonable compromise between pinning it completely down and being vulnerable to 1,000 security exploits within a month, or, letting it be a free-for-all, find something in the middle. But this story is about a developer maliciously doing something. If you're doing something maliciously, you just make it a patch version, right? See, oh yeah, no, this is just a minor change. I didn't totally replace all my code with a funny message, right? You can use, because they're just individual developers, right? And Marco called this a jerk move, right? This gets at like this particular story and the person. I'm not too interested in why they were angry or whatever. I don't think there's any justification for them. I think they were just a jerk. They did a mean thing, right? But the thing that I'm much more interested in is how many big important companies with lots of money are at the mercy of jerks, right? I mean, not inside the company. Obviously, they're all at the mercy of jerks inside the company. We've talked about this issue in the past, right? But externally, right? That is setting aside the jerks who are being jerks and they're doing mean things, they're doing whatever. Why is it that you, with all your money and all your people and all your smart big brains or whatever, are essentially building your business on top of work that other people are contributing to you out of the goodness of their heart, and you have no defense against any of them turning bad, especially, again, in a node where it's not just, 1 or 2 or 3 people that you could name, but literally tens, hundreds, thousands of people are contributing to the software. And, like Marco said, if you make something for free and put it out in the world and put it in a license and say anybody can use this for free, that's a choice that you've made. If you later come to regret that choice because suddenly it's used by everybody, you're like, man, if I had a nickel for everybody who used my library, I'd be rich now. Well, you didn't make that choice, right? But also, if you want to take your ball and go home, you can also do that, right? Because it's your ball, right? You can just stop developing it, or you can maliciously develop it, or you could, intentionally introduce bugs. That makes you a jerk, but it's a thing that you can do. And there's always going to be weird stuff like that. And the solution is not, we should yell at those people because by yelling, we'll somehow stop jerks from being jerks. Someone is always going to get mad and do a thing and take their ball and go home or screw things up or whatever. I feel like it's on the multi-billion-dollar corporations or even the individual small companies to be thoughtful about the third-party code that they use and game this out and say, if something goes wrong with the third-party code, how do we handle that? Do we do it by pinning our versions all the way down? Then how do we handle security problems? Do we have an automated test suite? Like, there are ways to deal with this, and you should talk about them at your company. I don't think the solution is don't use third-party software, and I don't think the solution is just don't worry about it. I forget if this story was before or after the Log4j thing came out.
It was after.
It was after?
I'm pretty sure.
But the Log4j thing is another example, right? This is a widely used piece of software that just had a bug. Like, no one just did anything malicious. It's just how software has bugs, right? But so many people use this software, it was, and probably still is, a fire drill across the entire world of software saying, if you have anything that uses Java, chances are it uses Log4j, and now you are vulnerable to this exploit. Patch all your software. And who develops Log4j? Oh, a bunch of volunteers. Oh, and the whole world runs on it? Yeah, pretty much. So what is your, this is a situation where you're not defending against someone malicious. There just happened to be a bug, human error. It happens, right? But suddenly, this is like the security problem that I mentioned with Node. Suddenly, without you knowing it, you and all your software are vulnerable to this exploit because it's already in there. So you need to do a thing to get it fixed. And a lot of people were like, when are you going to fix this bug? We need to fix ASAP. It's like, they're not your employee. The Log4j team doesn't work for you. Do you pay them? Are they your employee? You can't make them fix things faster. They could just decide we're never going to fix this. They didn't do that. They're not a bunch of jerks. They're nice people, right? But I feel for them because the whole world is looking at them and say, hey, we've been using your software for free for a decade now, but it's really important that you not sleep for the next 48 to 96 hours and fix this bug for us, because our big important company from which you profit zero amount is really in a bind here. So you really need to fix that. And that is the other part of this problem, which is like, if you're going to use open source software, you don't, and you're not going to do anything to help support it. You're not going to have a standing army on staff who understands the source code for Log4j and can fix their own bugs in it and contribute them back to the source or not, whatever. Like, it's open source, depending on the license, you can do whatever you have. But if you're not going to do that, if you're just going to assume all that third-party open source software we have, it's someone else's problem to make sure it's good and fit for purpose. And if it ever isn't good, even just something as simple as a bug, it's someone else's problem to fix it, and we're going to get really mad and pound the table and say, someone needs to fix this software that our company is built on. Well, why don't you fix it? But it's not our software. It's third-party software. They should fix it. Well, I mean, they probably eventually will because they're not jerks. But in the meantime, do you have anyone who works for your company that can help fix it faster or fix it yourself? Well, no, that's how we save money, by not paying anyone to do that, and we just use the third-party code. And it gets to, this is the XKCD comic, it's 2347. We'll put a link in the show notes. It shows like a block structure being built, this big elaborate block structure. It looks all fancy, and there's one side of it that's held up by this tiny little skinny block, and it said, the big structure is all modern digital infrastructure, and the tiny little block, the caption says, a project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2003. So much of that we build on is like at the mercy of a small number of nice people continuing to be not only nice, but essentially infallible. And the second they are not both nice and infallible, these big corporations turn their Sauron-like eye and say, fix this bug, it's going to destroy our multi-billion-dollar business. And you're like, I'm just in my basement in Nebraska, and I've been maintaining this open source thing that you've been using. And yeah, we let you use it for free, but it's not my problem that your company is going to burn down. If you care that much about this, maybe you should have, let's say, bought a support contract for this, for some company that can do that, or hired people who know enough about the source code to fix it, or essentially not take the software, but then not be, it's not like giving back. It's like, oh, you took it, you have to give back. You don't have to give back. The license says you don't have to give back. You don't have to give back. But the second you get into a bind, that's on you to say, we never prepared for this scenario. We are not prepared to support ourselves, right? So it's not a case of like, I took and didn't give back, which, they did, but you're allowed to, and according to these licenses. It's a case of we did not plan properly. We thought that this nice person would always be nice, and also that they would never make a mistake. And that is a poor assumption. And it's kind of hilarious to see, like, in the response to the Log4j thing, like the US government made this panel and this committee or whatever to say this because it's a national security concern, because, the government and military uses software that uses Log4j, and suddenly we're vulnerable to these exploits. How could it be? Like, suddenly we're vulnerable to, cyber espionage, and the government can't fix it because we're relying on, what is open source software? What do you mean someone else wrote it and they don't work? Like, having a committee where they have to sort of come to terms with the reality that we've all been living in, because suddenly there is a flashpoint event that makes everybody realize just how precarious everything is, I think is actually a useful, I think the government committee, especially in the US, is going to be pointless and terrible because, government stuff that has to do with computers is never good. But I think it's good for everyone to have like a moment of reckoning and saying, this is not new. This is the way it always has been and will continue to be. And I hope this helps people inside companies everywhere perhaps seize this, every crisis is an opportunity inside a company. Seize this crisis/opportunity to say, hey, do you like how this feels? If you don't, maybe we should put some small amount of money towards staffing somebody either in this company or a contractor, or giving directly to the open source maintainers, or having more commercial companies spring up that will offer commercial support contracts. Do something that involves money to make it so that we are not vulnerable to this type of thing. And it doesn't mean necessarily giving money to people that wrote software. There are tons of other things you can do. That's why there's so many companies built on open source products, where why would I pay this company for this product? I can just get the source code for free. Well, you're paying them for a support contract, which they charge you through the nose for. So you do have someone who you can yell out when it breaks because you're paying them, right? And if you're not going to pay anybody, and again, with Node, it gets complicated because like, well, you have 100,000 dependencies. You're telling me there's some company that's going to support all 100,000 of these? Do I have to give $10 checks to 100,000 people? No, but maybe if you hired like a team of 10 Node.js experts and gave them a salary and kept them as full-time employees of your company, the next time something went wrong with some library, they could parachute in and fix it themselves in your own local copy. So, I mean, this story probably hits closer to home. I guess if you're an open source author, maybe you're rooting for the guy to, be mad that he didn't get paid or whatever, but I'm not in that camp. I'm definitely in the camp of rooting for the people who run these big companies to get a clue that they actually need to do something to protect themselves, their company, and their customers from things like this. And it's not the fault of the open source people, and it's not the fault of, mean people doing mean things like this guy with colors. Like that's the, not the common case, but like you have to think about that because that's kind of the worst case scenario. If the Log4j people turned evil, they could have done much worse.
Well, the funny thing is, you talked about ways that corporate America can help, and Discourse did a victory lap about this after it happened. And when I first read this, I was like, yeah, go ahead, you guys. Great work. And now reading it again with a little distance between, when it was posted and now. So the post is Discourse Gives Back 2021 edition. Discourse had a great year. We raised a $20 million Series A investment, yada, yada, yada. So they talk about how they should give back, blah, blah, blah. And they enumerate, I don't know, maybe 10 different donations they made to different open source or community projects. And at first I was like, yeah, great work, folks. This is the way it should be. But it occurred to me, the sum total of all, 10 of these donations was like less than $100,000. In the same post, they just said, Discourse had a great year. We raised a $20 million investment. So of that $20 million, they were able to shave off less than $100,000. Well done.
I mean, you're not going to get like that kind of feel good stuff where you chuck a couple bucks over the thing. It's better than nothing.
It is.
What you have to think about is like, what is the value, the future value of our company, right? Like Discourse is going to be this big product. Like the future value of Discourse in some degree depends on Discourse not breaking and being terrible and having security problems, right? How much is it worth to you to make sure Discourse continues to function correctly? And it should be worth a lot more than a one-time feel-good random investment to develop. Because honestly, that's probably like those developers, they don't want to work for Discourse. They can't get $10 from every company and be like a $10 employee of every company in the world, right? And maybe they don't want to start a company that sells commercial support for their open source library. And again, with the Node.js case, there's thousands of those people. So how are you going to work that, right? What it calls into question is how much are we building our business on software that we didn't write that we have no way to support? Right? That's a risk factor in your company. Sometimes it's a risk worth taking and you get lucky and everything works out. And eventually you get so big that you're, too big to fail or whatever, or like that you can deal with these bumps in the road. But when you're just starting out, it's, you get a huge boost from building on open source software. If you get unlucky, you don't have the skills to fix it. You can't pay people to help you fix it. And it breaks and it takes down your company. But Discourse is probably big enough now where they should be thinking about how do we do this in-house? Again, it's good to give money to the people who make the software. Hell, if if Discourse was smart and they really care about some particular library that's really important to their product, see if you can hire that person. Again, maybe they don't want to be hired, but then maybe you can hire someone and say your only job is to be the in-house guru for these two libraries. So learn the source, start contributing to it. Make a local fork of it if needed or whatever, but we need that library to always work. And if it ever breaks, we need it to be fixed ASAP. So now that's your job. And that's going to take a lot more than a one-time $100,000 donation. You can't get a single programmer to do anything for that amount of money once you factor in healthcare and all the other stuff. So, I think it is definitely better than just ignoring the problem and doing nothing. So I think Discourse is, it's good for them to be proud that they are essentially, we're giving away money, quote unquote, for free. We're just throwing at these people because they made some software we use. But they're not actually solving the problem because that money doesn't entitle them 3 years from now when something breaks in some obscure library to say, hey, remember we gave you $5,000 3 years ago? Well, it's time for you to get up out of bed at 3 a.m. and fix this problem for us. And they would say, who is this?
We are sponsored this week by Jumpcloud. Try Jumpcloud for free at jumpcloud.com. Introducing the Jumpcloud directory platform, the directory reimagined for the modern world. Jumpcloud changes the way IT administrators manage their organizations by providing a comprehensive and flexible cloud directory platform. From one pane of glass, you can manage user identities and resource access, secure Mac, Windows, and Linux devices, and get a full view of your environment. Try Jumpcloud for free today at jumpcloud.com. Once again, try it for free at jumpcloud.com today. Help your organization move to a more modern, secure, hybrid work model. Thank you so much to Jumpcloud for sponsoring our show.
All right, so we have a twofer from Omri Arbiv. First of all, what's Marco's current coffee setup? Has Marco tried James Hoffman's excellent AeroPress technique? And also, why aren't you roasting your own coffee, man? What's going on there?
This is amazingly topical. I didn't know about the roasting stuff.
So the current coffee setup is AeroPress still for if I'm making only one cup. And if I'm making more than one, which is the case most mornings, I'm using my Ratio 8. It's a fancy hipster coffee maker that's very nice. It is an automatic drip machine. It's just a good automatic drip machine. And it's not as good as AeroPress coffee, but it is less work in my morning routine when making 2 cups. Because now that I'm like doing my big, like, fake eggs with vegetables, stirred into them and cooked up, like, it's my breakfast is a lot of work these days, through my own choice. And I appreciate that, but the time spent on the coffee needed to go down. And with the Ratio 8 being a drip machine, I could kind of like batch it and set it all up and then just hit go and then walk away and do my other stuff. And then come back right before, I'm serving breakfast. Everything's hot, ready to go. Pour the coffee and it's done. And
for people who don't know, the Ratio 8 machine has wood on it.
Of course it does.
Yeah, when he says hipster coffee maker, it's got wood on it.
Yeah, I was turned onto it years ago by Chase Reeves when I met him in Portland, and he showed it to me, and it looked really cool. And we picked it out for mostly aesthetic reasons, if I'm honest. When it came,
it's got wood on it.
Right, it's really nice. But it's a really great coffee maker also. Anyway, so yeah, that's the coffee setup, and I stopped roasting because 2 things changed. First of all, my tastes shifted a little bit lighter than they were at first. That made it harder for me to do my own roast because making a light roast in a home roaster is actually pretty difficult to really nail it. And certainly, I didn't have the skill to really do that well. And secondly, the mail order things all got better. Over the last X years. I mean, I started roasting maybe 10 years ago. It's been a long time. Well, in the meantime, we've had a lot more really good mail order options, and I've been really happy with those. And so my taste shifted towards a type of coffee that I'm not very good at roasting, and also the available options for me to just buy someone else's expertly roasted version of that increased and got better. So that's what happened.
Good deal. So have you tried this AeroPress technique? I have not watched this video.
I watched that entire series of videos, and I still haven't done it. Because honestly, like my technique, which I do the inverted method, and I kind of, I grind 15 grams into like a full AeroPress inverted. So like I pull it out to the 4 line, but upside down, and I just pour in water and stir it. Wait a few seconds, and I slowly press it out, and it's fine. I'm sure I could perfect that more, if I actually tried this better method. But this better method is also more time consuming, and my method is fine. It works fine for me. This is an area where I used to care a lot about all these details, and now I care less about these details. Like I've been focusing my energies, more intensely in areas that I want to care a lot more about. And certain things had to fall by the wayside. This is why, for instance, I care less about cars than I used to. That had to kind of make room for other stuff.
Well, no, you stopped caring about cars when you bought a Tesla. Hey-o!
And, similarly, I care a lot less about the fine details of the coffee process now because I get results that I consider very good with very little effort. And to answer some other questions, I am still using my Baratza Virtuoso grinder. I'm using the technique that I think I might have first saw in a James Hoffman video, where you spritz the beans with a little bit of water before you put them in the grinder, and that eliminates all static cling. This is amazing. Look, if anybody out there, if you grind your own coffee and you're not doing this, I'm telling you, this is like a life changer. If you grind your own coffee, but it makes a mess when you take out the little hopper because of static electricity, like making the grounds like cling to everything. So you take a little spritzer, any little water spritzer. I got a little one on Amazon. It looks like it's made for perfume or something. I got a 4-pack for $10, and you just put plain water in it. It's nothing special, and you just spritz the beans right before you put them in the coffee grinder. That gives it just enough moisture that static electricity doesn't really factor in. It doesn't have a chance to do anything.
People with hair will be familiar with this phenomenon from hair and combing.
There you go. Yeah. And so the beans come out, and it's like they come out perfectly, and there's no like dust flying everywhere. It's a game changer for like how messy your coffee counter gets when you're making coffee. Anyway, so yeah, I'm still using my Brazzo Virtuoso from, that's probably 10 or 12 years old now. It's still working great because they build those things with pretty good quality. And and then AeroPress or the Ratio 8.
Do you have any particular beans that you can throw your weight behind?
I go between a few. Former sponsor and possibly future sponsor, Yes Please. That is my like standard. Like I always fall back to that one. So that's always in the rotation. Usually I get that one every 2 bags that I get. And then the one that I'm mixing in with it, I will either do something from Trade when I'll go between different roasters there, or I'll go to Intelligentsia. All 3 of those options are great. They all have different, things going for them and everything. All 3 of them are great. I strongly recommend all 3 of them, honestly. So yeah, Intelligentsia, Yes Please, and Trade. All of them.
Trade former and future sponsor, yep. Yes Please, former sponsor, and Intelligentsia have been none of the above.
Yeah, but yeah, they all do things great. Intelligentsia's roasts are a little bit darker, but they tend to have really nice single origins. So if I'm going for something like a really nice Costa Rica, or if when they do have Kenya, which is not that often, but Kenya is still my favorite when I can get it, but it's not super easy to get all year round. Trade has, there's a million options of Trade, so I don't really recommend any particular blend or roaster. Just go there if you want a million options, because the whole thing, they tailor it to you and everything. That's a good thing. And then what's great about Yes Please is that Yes Please is extremely consistent. Everything I've gotten from when I've ordered coffee from other places, I get mostly stuff I like. Occasionally I get something I don't like. Yes Please is like, it's my rock of consistency. They produce something I've liked every single time. Like, that's what's great about it. It doesn't always blow me away. Like, sometimes it's really nice, but usually it's not like, oh my God, this is incredible. Usually it's like, this is something I can depend on being great every single time. Like, it's always good. It's definitely a crowd pleaser too. Like, if you have anybody who like is very sensitive to any more bitter roasts, you'll never offend them with anything from Yes Please. So that's why, like, that's my default. If I have to recommend something to somebody who doesn't know what they like and wants something that's like the same consistency every single time, that's Yes Please.
And then also from Omri, is John still subscribed to cable? At what point is paying for cable no longer worth it for him?
I pay for cable and also tons of streaming services. It's the future we were promised. I can pay even more money for even more things. I think cable for me is tied to my TiVo, right? So if my TiVos break, I don't buy new ones, that will probably be the end of cable, because cable without TiVo is probably not going to work for me. But of course, every cable company has their own, server-side DVR solution that they'll try to sell you as well. So maybe I would try that. But the main reason I still subscribe to it is it's part of some big package thing, and I get all the fancy channels. And there are still some things that are on television, either before or only on television, before on the streaming service, or they're not on the streaming service at all, or they're on the streaming service much later. And I'm not even talking about things like sports with blackout or whatever. Not every streaming service is a complete reflection. Like, no matter how much you pay them, is a complete accurate reflection of everything that's on all the channels that are on a large cable subscription. So it is, good to have it. And it depends on what we're doing. Like, the Olympics is one example. We're recording the Olympics on the TiVo, but then we also subscribe to the Peacock streaming service to get even more stuff. I do have to say, related to streaming video apps, given that I'm using an older TiVo, It's the interface of using a TiVo to jump around video on your TV is still so much better than every one of the fancy streaming apps that's available on all these high-powered platforms like the phone and iPad and Mac and and websites or whatever. TiVo is still superior for that, just because it's responsive and works and is very reliable. So yeah, I think I'm pretty close to being able to get away without cable, but I see no reason to to give up what I have now, other than saving the money, I suppose. So I'm just going to stay with it until all my TiVos die. And replacing them, like TiVo still exists and will sell you a device, but I always look, because they always have these come-ons like save X number of $100 on this TiVo, blah, blah, blah. I always look, but as far as I can tell, they do not sell a TiVo with as much storage as the one I currently have. The closest one they have, I think they sell you is like half the storage. It's like, why would I ever buy a TiVo that's worse than the one I have now? Why would I don't know you can replace the hard drive and blah, 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 but I'm not going to go down that road. Like, why would I buy one that has either fewer tuners or less hard drive space or both? That just seems like pointless to me. So when my thing breaks, maybe I'll buy the smaller one, or maybe I just won't buy one at all, or maybe I'll try the cable companies. I'll try the Fios the DVR, or maybe I'll just cut the cord then. But it hasn't happened yet.
All right, Paul Walker writes, do you have a good system for managing family contacts, especially kids, friends, and their parents across your multiple devices? Yeah, you tell each other, oh, so-and-so's number is 123-456-7890. That's what we do. I have no good...
You airdrop them the contact card.
Yeah, that's actually another good example. Yeah, but I certainly do not have a good answer for this question.
This is just like the photos thing. This is what I always bring up when we talk about photos. Is like, hey, Apple, if you think this is really hard, start with something small, like contacts, because it's a small amount of data. Like photos are large and extremely numerous, but contacts are small and not that numerous. It's a small data set. This is a great place to try out your ideas about how it can work. The thing that it is replacing from my youth was an address book. And every member of the family in general did not have their own little address book with grandma's phone number in it. There was one address book by the phone, which was attached to the wall with a wire. And in the address book was grandma's phone number and address. And if grandma moved or changed their phone number, we'd change it in that address book. Some people did have their own individual address books. Maybe, you got your phone numbers of all your friends in your little address book, but you wouldn't also probably put, all of your relatives' addresses in there, because those can be in the family address book. This is a model that existed for a long time before computers existed. And when computers came along, it was more convenient implementation-wise for everyone to just have their own contacts. And, we made a great way for you to share contacts. Wow. Well, you just give someone else a copy. It's like, that's not sharing. Then now when grandma's phone number changed, everybody has to change it in all of their books. That's, we have the technology. We can do better than this. So, Paul, I do not have a good system for managing family contacts. In fact, this just happened recently. My wife asked me, what's your brother's address? And I said, I don't even think I have my brother's address in my thing. And if I do, it might be his previous house. Because in our family, we've basically just decided that my wife has the canonical address book because she does the addressing of the Christmas cards.
Yep, that's me.
Where it has to count. And I do have lots of addresses and names of people in my personal contacts.
That's Aaron.
But I'm not confident they're up to date, because if something changes, we change it in her address book, which is the quote-unquote real address book. But I still want to have contacts in my thing. At the very least, I'd have like the iMessage ID of my brother so I can, text with him or whatever. But I'm not confident that I have his current house address. And this is a terrible situation. It's like the photo situation, but at a smaller scale. So I really hope Apple does fix this. And there are probably third-party applications that do way better. I just don't know of them. So I don't personally have a good system for managing family contacts.
Yeah, I don't either. I feel like maybe a decent way to do this would be kind of similar to how, I don't know, for anybody who's used 1Password for families, the idea is that you have your own private 1Password items, and anything you add by default is private. But you can then you have the option to move or copy any 1Password item into the shared family vault. And then that's accessible and editable by anybody in the family. And I think that might be a good way to do contacts of like, maybe you still have by default, maybe everything is still private to you because, you don't necessarily need the contacts of everybody else in your family. But you probably have, as John said, like family members or, close family friends, whatever, you probably have certain ones that you want everyone to have access to. But that, again, you want a centralized, only one source of truth to edit when that changes. And so maybe that could be a thing where there's like, family contacts, and then, you can move a contact into the family, and then everyone gets it and everyone can edit it.
Yeah, I mean, again, because the data is so small, there's lots of, it's easier to think about it here and easier to implement. And in fact, Apple does something not similar, but they have, I believe they have some kind of solution to sharing for reminders, for example, because we have reminders that we share amongst the family, and I think those work on an individual basis. Like when I share a reminder, it doesn't just give a copy of it to someone else. It is both of us editing. Same thing with notes. Notes, you can do a shared note, which for sure is both of us seeing the same note. And reminders, we're both seeing the same reminder. And if I edit the reminder, it updates on my wife's phone as well. That is not as convenient as what Marco was just saying, which is like, well, how about if there was like you could collect reminders into the family reminder library. I think you might be able to do that with reminders too. But like the point is, this is not a completely foreign concept to Apple. They have just not extended it to contacts, and they certainly haven't extended it to photos. And it is a common problem that's going to come up in any family situation where there's going to be some data that is private to the individuals and some data that wants to be shared. And I hope Apple gets around to tackling it on all of the things that they collect data for eventually.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, Kolide, Jumpcloud, and Lutron Caséta. And thanks to our members who support us directly. You can join at atp.fm/join, and we will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
You skipped our bonus Ask ATP, man.
Oh, there's a bonus askatp, man?
Yeah, well, the bonus can go in the after show. Although before that, someone pointed out that you do obviously calendar sharing as well. I use Google Calendar for that, but I think Apple does it the same way, where they don't give you a copy of the calendar. It is actually a shared calendar, and you can make it.
Yeah, there's a family calendar that you can make, yeah.
Yeah, and then apparently Apple will make one by default that is shared with all the people in your family. So they're traveling down this road just extremely slowly. Yeah.
All right, the bonus Ask ATP very quickly was from Nick Van Dupas, who writes, do you say you're in front of the computer or behind the computer? You absolutely say you're in front of the computer.
Did anyone ever said behind?
I don't know.
I mean, you could have a colorful turn of phrase where you could say all the people lined up behind their computers or something like that. But no, I'm sitting in front of the computer. Yeah, I mean, maybe it varies in different English-speaking countries, or maybe it varies in non-English-speaking countries. But I have always said I'm in front of the computer. What do you do in front of the computer all day? Sitting in front of the TV all day. We're always in front of it.
There it is.
Well, if you think about like the computer like as having a face, like what is the front of a computer and the back of a computer, right? I think it's obvious that like the front of the computer is the screen and possibly the keyboard, and the back of the computer is like the back of the screen lid if it's a laptop or
where
whatever.
The wires come out.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And so I think any way that you would try to define the front or back of a computer, I think people would pretty much agree on that. And where you sit is facing its front. And your front is facing its front as well, unless you're doing something really weird. And so I would imagine, that's why I have a hard time thinking of any way somebody would perceive this as you being behind the computer if your front is facing the computer's front, anytime you're using it.
I mean, but the thing is that phrases and language phrases don't logically follow from, you can reverse reason it logically, but that's not how language works. I mean, as someone in the chat room pointed out, in English in particular, we say you get behind the wheel of a car, and you're not behind the wheel, you're in front of it. But like language does not follow the logic that you have just outlined. It just is what it is, and it is it is an idiom, a saying. It is the language that developed around computers and televisions for that matter. And so in fact, the computer language probably just inherited from television, because we're all sitting in front of the TV. And as soon as we got computers, I mean, the first computers, you were actually literally hooked up to your TV in your home. So that probably, sort of explains the path that we traveled, but logic has nothing to do with it. It's just the way it is.
Well, I can see two different ways to get here. Okay, so first of all, the behind the wheel of a car, if you think about behind in the form of motion, then when the car is in motion, unless you're going in reverse, but normally in forward motion of the car, you are behind the wheel.
Oh, interesting point. Yeah.
But where's the front of the wheel and where's the front of you? It's the same logic as before. You know what I mean? Where's the back of the steering wheel? The paddles are on the back of the steering wheel. The logo is on the front. The front of you is the part where your nose is. The fronts are facing each other. It's the same situation.
Well, but so there's the question of for two stationary objects, I think if you're saying what's
special
behind,
relativity, you're really working hard to back solve for this one.
If you're talking about objects that are stationary, if you're saying are you in front of it or behind it, then I think the question is like, what direction are these objects facing?
All right, so again, if you're on a train but you're facing backwards.
Right. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah. So if you're stationary, it's a matter of which direction the objects are facing. And if you are in motion, then it's a matter of like, what's the direction of motion and which object is more in front of it.
So when you're on a train, are you behind the computer? But if you're sitting backwards on the thing, you're in front of it again. If you're on a train going close to the speed of light and you open a laptop screen, the screen is facing forward, how fast does the light come out of the laptop screen?
This is going nowhere good. How do we end up in Robot or Not?
This is amazing.
Yeah, this is kind of that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just language phrases. They seem normal to you because you're used to them, but a lot of them, if you try to explain them logically, they don't make any sense. It's just like, we all know what this means. It's the phrase we've all agreed upon. It is a cultural thing, and that's why it can vary from language. What do we talk about? Foreign language expressions. I wish I could remember one of them, but like how widely they vary from country to country and language to language, all saying basically the same thing.
All right, one more theory. All right, so what if, from the perspective from what we as broadcasters would describe the position of the audience, like if you're a TV broadcaster, you might think like you're looking through the camera through someone's TV screen and they are behind the TV screen from your perspective as the TV broadcaster, right? I can kind of understand that. When we talk about like people's online communication, suppose we are talking about some, jerk commenter on a website. We might think of that person as being behind their computer from our perspective of seeing them on the internet. So there is I can kind of see, I've heard that phrasing before, like, this is a stranger behind a screen or behind a computer. Like, I have heard that.
They're hiding behind their computer.
Right, exactly. And so they're from certain perspectives.
But they're sitting in front of their computer while they hide behind it.
They are sitting in front of their computer, but from our perspective, maybe they are behind their computer.
Yeah, from our inertial frame of reference. Right, yeah, okay. This is all totally a relativity thing.
Yeah, I love that I started this podcast, being a health doctor, and now we're ending it being physics professors.
Our talents are broad.
Not that they're not. That's
deep.
the problem.
This is related to the thing. Remember this question ages ago? Like, what are the relative positions of us in your mind when you're listening to the podcast? Are we sitting in a row? Are we sitting in a circle? Are we stacked vertically? Like, no, because Marco doesn't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't do any panning in the mix or anything, right?
No, and by the way, anybody who produces a podcast, don't do that. People hate it. A very common feature request that podcast app makers get is a downmix to mono feature, which I'm going to add soon. Don't worry. But it's all there in the code. I just have no interface for it yet. But because people who hear podcasts where people are not mixed in the absolute center, listeners hate it. In many ways, it makes it extremely difficult for certain people to listen to it at all. So yeah, don't do that. But yes, everyone's always dead center.
But still, even with us dead center, the question remains, and that was the question we talked about, how do you picture the people? And you were doing the reverse. It was like, how do we picture ourselves? Like, we're not on television looking into a camera, seeing the audience behind the camera. We're just talking to a microphone. So where do we picture the audience? And to that, I would say, I'm a tiny little person inside your ear canal.
Wow. No, you know what we should do?
Did you?
You know what we should do? Remember, I don't know, a couple months ago, Upgrade did the like low bit rate release where they had released like a couple of extra copies at like ridiculously, hilariously bad bit rates. You should do one where you're in the center and John is on the left and I'm on the right or something like that, just to mess with people and just they could hear.
No, we should change positions every sentence.
Oh God.
Hard pan left, hard pan right.
Oh, I have to use like the crappy automation thing in Logic. Oh, it's such a pain.
It should be like a rotation where it's just a constantly spinning thing. And whenever we speak, we just hop onto that train and then yeah.
You know, Marco, if you were a really good editor, you would really embrace spatial audio.
Exactly. Yeah,
I am such a good editor that I know not to do this because us joking about it is funny right here. But if I actually did this, people would hate it so much. You don't understand how much they would hate it. Trust me, it is very hated.
I should make it sound like I'm a tiny person in the ear canal, but I'm so small that the ear canal is like a cathedral, and my voice echoes.
That I can do.
Audio.
Reverb is fine because that doesn't mess people up too badly. Yeah, that's totally fine.
But you can do spatial audio with that because like Casey could be the other end of the ear canal. We could yell to each other and our voices could bounce.
Hello.